Welcome, folks, to episode number 45 of the No Conference for Old Men podcast where three old guys are talking Houston Cougars basketball with a bit of Big 12 coverage added in as well, and proud members of the GoCoogs.com network, the undisputed number one Houston Cougars content provider. We're here today with all three of the old men: Tom Lydiak, former coach; Bill Walker, former player; and myself, Steve Chang, analytics guy for this episode. Well, our Cougars go 2-0 this week against the toughest pair of games of the season, with wins over ISU at home, 68-59, and then turning around for a quick Big Monday win at Tech, 69-61, to earn at least a share of the conference championship for the second time in 2 years in the Big 12. An incredible achievement for Sampson's program, with still 3 games to go. Just unreal. Now comes yet another pair of brutal Saturday, Big Monday set of games, thankfully at home this time, against what we thought would be 2 teams at the very top of the standings along with us. Cincinnati on Saturday, followed by Kansas on Monday. In the first win over ISU, 2 key starters were out for ISU in Jones and Gilbert, but hats off to our Houston squad for staying focused and keeping things strictly business in dispatching the always tough Cyclones. While the Tech game, where they were also down 2 players in Williams and McMillan, it was more about providing a bit of payback of the one conference loss this season in a raucous Lubbock environment. But we pulled it out, and now we can pivot to looking ahead towards March. So the special topic this week is going to be around who do we actually think we match up well against come March, looking at some of the likely 1 and 2 seeds and maybe sprinkling in a few 3 and 4 seeds as well. So let's get into it. In dissecting our wins against 2 of the top 4 teams of the Big 12 this week, let's begin with a post-game analysis of the business-like win over ISU at home. Then we'll transition to your thoughts on the satisfying Big Monday win over Tech to celebrate winning the Big 12 championship on their home court. Let's start with you first, Tom. What were some of the things you saw from a coach's perspective in the ISU game?
Well, first of all, if you're unaware that ISU was playing without their 2 top scorers, you were reminded by Fran Fraschilla, I think every 2, 3, 4 minutes. I love Fran Fraschilla, but after a while it gets kind of nauseating. And as U of H basketball fans, we know too well about injuries the past several years. So there's not a whole lot of sympathy coming on our end. You still got to go out and play the game and win. As far as the game itself, 2 words jump out at me, and that's step back, as in LJ Cryer step back jumper, the one he's been using since he was in 3rd grade, according to Jamal Shed. LJ was just fantastic. There were some people on the message boards, blah, 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 whatever, saying we reverted too much. We relied too much on just giving ball to LJ and, playing give and go basketball. Just give me the ball and everybody else get the hell out of the way. But, if you got a player like that in your squad and you can get a disadvantage, you go for it. Yeah. Some will say, man, we would have been in a lot of trouble if we didn't have LJ this game. Well, you know what? Same thing. You say same thing about the Celtics if they didn't have Larry Bird in the game, or Michael Jordan, for the Bulls. Man, if, Michael Jordan saved us today, well, yeah, it's a good thing you got him on the team. Anyway, LJ clutch shot after clutch shot. They were really pressuring Milo's 40 feet from the basket. But then again, when you work so hard to deny a guy like Cryer the ball, and then you're up in your point guard's group, so there's nobody help on drives, and Milo's was able to get to the rim several times and score. I thought we had too many possessions where the shot clock was winding down. We really haven't had that issue all year long. But give credit to ISU for playing good defense. Had a 16-point lead, kind of looked like we might be running away with the game, and instead we turned the ball over several times. ISU wasn't having to play a whole lot of offense there in one stretch because we were turning the ball over and they were scoring on some of those turnovers. And then it comes down to the last minute and a half. Magic Johnson used to call that winning time, and I think we were up 3 or 4, and Emmanuel gets the ball. Shot clock's winding down. He's got a good matchup on him. I think they switched out on him, and everybody knows what Emmanuel's going to do. He takes a couple of dribbles, and then he hits a step back. Had to be from probably 30 feet from Kingwood, and that was the dagger. Emmanuel hits that one. That was the icing on the cake, and set us up for the Tech game on Monday.
Nice. Bill, how about your views of the ISU win from a player's perspective?
Well, to piggyback a little bit on what Tom was saying, let's start out with what the TV guys, Shambi and Fraschilla, have harped on ad nauseum over the past two games. We caught a break because ISU and Tech played shorthanded. And in this game, State's top two scorers, Curtis Jones and Keyshawn Gilbert, were out. Did we benefit? Yes, we did. No argument about it. But did people associate our losses last year with asterisks because Roberts was hurt, Arsenault was out, Tugler was out? How about Duke making the Final Four, which never comes close to happening if Shed doesn't go down? And this year, Sharp's missed time, Javier's been out, Jaywan's been hurt, Cryer's been hurt, Ramon's out for the year. The point is, injuries hit everyone. Everyone experiences them at certain times, and sometimes you're the beneficiary and sometimes you're not and you're at a loss. It just happens. Back to the game, give State credit. We made the game look easy in the first half, scoring 34, limiting State to a mere 22. Clearly State and Oxelberger made some adjustments at halftime. They really ramped up their defensive pressure on the perimeter, and we didn't respond especially well. Milos, despite a great shooting game, committed 4 turnovers to only 1 assist, which is an absolute rarity for him. Sharp and Cryer also committed multiple turnovers, which made the game sort of a tale of two halves. And State ended up stealing the ball from us 10 times. What we did do well was we hit shots. Uzan was 7 of 10 for 19 points, and our MVP, Cryer, who you mentioned, Tom, 11 of 17, 5 of 7 from 3 for 28. Just a great game. We shot over 53% from the field, 59% from 3. Giving up 37 points in the second half isn't ideal, but our D was its typical outstanding self, 59 points for the entire game, and ISU shot under 40% from the field. Despite 7 steals defensively, Jefferson and Monsilovich were putrid shooting the ball, shooting 5 of 23 and 2 of 10 from deep. Monsilovich hit a bunch of free throws, so he did score 16, but we held a lot of their shooters well under their typical field goal percentage. But what concerns me still a bit is Tugler's fouls. But a win over a top 10 team is what really matters, and that's what happened here. So we're good.
Yeah, from an advanced analytics perspective, looking at this ISU game, this was the one game we had this year against our key nemesis for the crown last season in the Big 12. This season was more the same atop the conference standings, and both came in as arguably the 2 most balanced teams in the conference, but definitely with the 2 most hard-nosed defenses in the conference. With 2 starters out, it was no surprise that we really disrupted things on offense for ISU, limiting them to 38.5% from 2-point range and turnovers on 20% of their possessions. The only thing that ISU was able to do on offense was from the 3-point line, where they hit 40% of their shots. Again, our one area of degradation on D this season. For us offensively, honestly, I don't think we could have shot any better. Effective field goal percentage was at almost 64% and 59% from 3-point range. Key stat of the game that ultimately kept the game as close as it was around turnovers, where we had a terrible day on that front with turnovers on 27% of our possessions. Of course, ISU's Inspired D had a lot to do with that, but we'll take the 68-59 win, as you guys have both mentioned, and move on, because a big Monday road showdown with this season's nemesis was still looming in Lubbock versus Tech. For Tech, yet another short turnaround for this game, plus the crazy delusional fans in Lubbock. And this was a payback game for the one loss we did have this season at home. Let's begin with you first, Bill. What were your quick thoughts from a player's perspective versus Tech?
Well, 69-61 win. I felt pretty confident that I would have predicted this one absolutely correctly, as I predicted us to win 69-62. Of course, missed it by 1 point. Now, in my defense, I was completely unaware that all-world unicyclist and bowl catcher on her head, Red Panda, would be performing at half. We've always played well when she comes out at halftime and flips countless bowls on her head. Had I admittedly, had I better researched the game and known she'd come out at halftime, I would have adjusted my prediction accordingly. What I did know and what I told and texted several friends at halftime was that Tech had no chance in the second half due to Red Panda's appearance. None at all. So thank you, Red Panda. Now, this was a really pretty ugly first half. At one point, I yelled at the TV, "We need you to step up, Emmanuel." And almost on cue, he hit back-to-back threes, and we were at least up 33-30 at halftime, of course, prior to Red Panda. They really shut down Cryer and Roberts in the first half, Cryer for the game. But we did hold them to 33% from the field in the first half, which, by the way, was their best shooting half, and 20% from three. Post Red Panda, we showed that we were the better team. Uzan needed to take over offensively, and he really did, including that absolute three-point dagger late. Roberts got the ball. He drew fouls, which and hit his shots, which offset Cryer's 1 of 5 night. Where we really shined, though, was defensively. Yeah. Tech shot under 30% for the game. And listen to these numbers for 5 of the 6 players who played for Tech. Their best player, Toppin, 6 of 18 from the field. Their shooting guard, Anderson, 2 of 11 and 0 of 6 from 3. Their point guard, Hawkins, who hurt us the first game, 2 of 10, 2 of 7 from 3. Kerwin Williams was far and away their best shooter, and he was 4 of 11, all of which were threes, including a couple of just bombs, deep bombs late that kept the score relatively respectful. Tech also committed only 3 turnovers in the first half, but had 10 for the game, which is obviously attributable to our strong defense. Yeah, playing without McMillan and Williams hurt Tech, but you know what? Again, if Shed doesn't get hurt last year, we roll through Duke, we roll through NC State, we beat Purdue, we play UConn, and we possibly, at least temporarily, shut up Danny Hurley. So, it goes both ways. The 2 final points I'll make. One, and it happened with Tugler again, he can't be picking up bad fouls, following the 3-point shot late. He can't be limiting his playing time. There's a fine line between aggressiveness and fouling, and we need his aggressiveness, but we need it on the floor. And my second point, if there's an award to be given for the most rude, obnoxious, classless fan base maybe ever assembled, pro or college sports, congratulations, Texas Tech. You are Big 12 champs and probably national champs.
Completely agree. Tom, how about your coach's view on the game versus Tech?
Like Bill said, Tech fans, annoying. They should hang a banner saying something like, we almost beat U of H without our top 2 scorers, blah, 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 and all this. But you know what? They only played 6 players, but that was their choice. If you take their 6 players who played, the 2 that sat out, that gives you 8 players. You have Devin Cambridge as the 9th player. Then you have 4 or 5 other guys on the bench. Why didn't you play those? If death became an issue, why'd you recruit them? It just happens. We had Said last year because of injuries last year. We had Said Lot come in there, and not just in a non-conference game. We had him in there when we played Kansas when we were still fighting for a Big 12 title. So no sympathy from this Houston Cougar basketball fan as far as injuries go. Heck, we lost Sasser. We lost Tremont Mark for the season, not just for a couple of games. Lost them for the season and still made it to the Elite Eight. So, Cry Me a River. I don't want to listen to it. But getting back to the game, was it 33-30 at halftime? And it was kind of rough for Royal. I thought about the 13-minute mark. It was kind of getting sloppy on both ends. Bill alluded to too much fouling. There was a period there where it just seems like we just fouled. I think we had like 3 fouls on one possession.
Yeah.
But you know what? We're the Houston Cougars. What do? We play tough, and the tougher team wins. And speaking of that, when they beat us 81 at Fertitta, when McCaslin was kicked out, when they left the locker room, I guess on the whiteboard in the Fertitta Center, it said the tougher team won. And, I think we probably got a hold of that. They even had T-shirts made up.
It's ridiculous.
They had the student body, and who else wanted to wear it? Those black T-shirts for Blackout saying the tougher team wins. And that's something else is, it's one thing to tell it to your team that the toughest team wins, but leave it on a whiteboard for the other team to see when they come in there, maybe not such a great idea doing that. Yeah. And then we beat them, and it kind of looks like maybe female handwriting. I'm thinking maybe Lauren Sampson, but on our whiteboard, it's a couple of our players took pictures of it and put them on their Instagram accounts. It said back-to-back Big 12 champ and the toughest team won. Uzan score is 62-59. We had the ball, and Cryer drives the lane. He kind of momentarily loses it. He regains control. He kicks it out to a wide open Milos Uzan, and Uzan just hit a dagger that put us up by 6. And I don't know if anybody saw that, but when they were coming out of that timeout, there was a timeout right before that possession, and Milos was talking to Coach Sampson, and he was kind of like nodding his head, and it was almost like he was saying, "Coach, we got this. Something's going to happen in this possession." And then he hits that big 3, and then he turns to the bench. I'm not sure if he was looking at Kelvin or
it was Kelvin,
or Quantis or whoever, but just a dagger. Milos Uzan, boy, what can you say about him coming in here and following the footsteps of Jamal Shed? Kind of got off to a little rocky start. He had some doubters, but now he's comfortable. His confidence is sky high, and that's great for us heading into this last stretch of Big 12 play and into March Madness tournament.
Yeah, just incredible growth for him over the season. Just so fun to watch, right? So, as you guys had both mentioned, yes, Tech had 2 starters out. And boy, their fans whined about it incessantly after the game. But you know what? Don't give a shit. We never made excuses, right? Mm-hmm. When we lost Terrence and Tugler last season, or Sasser and Mark 3 seasons ago. Come on, it's next man up. And guess what? We actually won conference championships both seasons, and we lost those players for extended periods of time. So I'm relishing our first season in a while with some, fingers crossed, good health coming into March. Now, from an advanced analytics perspective, this was yet another defensive masterpiece for Sampson against Tech. We limited them inside and out, even with Toppin playing this game, with effective field goal percentage for Tech at a lowly 35%, 20% from three-point range and 41% from two-point range. What allowed them to keep things close was their offensive rebounding, which was a very, very impressive 42.5%. On the flip side, we shot lights out from three-point range offensively at 50%, and it was the Milos Uzan and Joanne Roberts show. And even though Roberts didn't shoot at a high rate, boy, he was so clutch with free throws yesterday. And we won on the road, celebrating yet another championship on Tech's home court, and boy, how sweet it is. Now let's get to a fun pair of games coming up against 2 teams we actually thought coming into the season would be at the top of the standings with us in the Big 12. Hosting Cincinnati on Saturday first, and then Kansas on another big Monday matchup. Great matchups that all 3 of us will actually be in Houston for. So let's provide a quick preview and cover both games together. Tom, you can go first from a coach's perspective on both games.
Well, when we're talking about Cincinnati, high expectations for Cincinnati coming into the season by lots of people. And once conference play start, they just didn't get her done. Probably one of the most disappointing teams to start off conference.
Yeah.
They're in a dogfight now just to make the NCAAs. They are playing better the last 7 or 8 games. I think they're 5-2 or 5-3 in their last 7 or 8 games. So they're kind of playing like people expected them to. There's talent there. They got a good coach in Wes Miller, but for some reason it just wasn't clicking. At the first part of the year, they had some really, really bad losses So it's it's going to be a dogfight. We're at home at the Fertitta Center. Like Steve said, knock on wood, we're healthy. Got 3 games left in Big 12 play. We just need to go in there, take care of business on Saturday. But by no means will it be a quote unquote easy game. Since he's like a wounded animal, they got their backs to the wall. They know like every game for them is a tournament game. It's like an elimination game.
Yeah.
So we're going to get their best shot. And we always get team's best shot.
Yeah.
When you play the Houston Cougars, we got a bullseye on our backs, and teams usually give it their best effort. So Cincinnati on Saturday, get one day, Sunday to prepare, whatever. And then Kansas comes to town. If you listen to podcasts, you know how much I love Kansas. Not Kansas. To me, they're like front runners. They play pretty well at home, but they get on the road where to win on the road, you got to be a tough team. And they play possum. They roll over and play dead on the road. People are always thinking, okay, one of these days Kansas is going to wake up and click, but they just have too many flaws on that team. I don't know, roster construction. AJ Storr didn't work out with them. Don't know what the deal with that is. It's almost like nobody knows what their roles are. On offense, they're not connected on defense all the time. They played great against us when we played them in Allen Fieldhouse. We'll just see how they play us on Monday. But I have no pity for Kansas. They've won their fair share of Big 12 titles and national titles. And it's just a new era of college athletics, college basketball. And Bill Self has not done a very good job of either signing particular players or getting them to understand what their roles are. I don't know what the deal is, but there's definitely some flaws in that Kansas basketball team.
Yeah, and you're all broken up about it, aren't you, Tom?
I'm just heartbroken. I like to watch Kansas play. I actually used to really like Kansas back when Roy Williams coached them. I liked, I just like to watch as a coach. I like to watch him play. Not so much anymore, especially that they're in the conference now with us. It's kind of like a train wreck, though. You shouldn't be watching, but I like to turn the TV on and watch Kansas play, especially on the road, because it's probably going to be an L.
Love it. How about you, Bill, from a player's perspective?
Cincinnati, Saturday, here at 3:30 on CBS, nationally televised. Cincy 17-11, but they're 7-10 in conference, sitting in 12th place in the Big 12. Cincy's a shocker to me. I thought they'd be a real sleeper this year. I thought they'd challenge for a top 5 spot in the Big 12. I thought they'd perennially be in the top 20 this year. And they were at one point. They were 10-1, and they were nationally ranked heading into conference play. By the way, the other team that I would say is almost as shockingly bad is our next opponent, who was preseason number 1 nationally.
I know.
With that said, since he's had a few good wins, but they've definitely had several bad losses, resulting in their mediocre record. They did beat a pretty currently shaky Baylor team last night, 69-67. 53, I believe, in Ken Palm. Really pretty poor all year offensively, but solid defensively. Since it has 10 guys that are playing 10 or more minutes per game, but none that are playing more than 28. So they're rested and they will be ready to go for the NIT.
Brutal.
Sorry. I'm not even sure. I'm not sure who to highlight, as some of their top scorers are now coming off the bench. And so here's what we've got. The one player who has not come off the bench and started all year, Jizzle James, the 6'3" guard. He's Edgerrin James, former NFL player's son, Hall of Fame NFL player's son, leads them in scoring about 12.5 a game. He launched 20 shots against Baylor. That'll probably continue versus us. He's quick. He's an inconsistent shooter, but he can get hot. and he leads them in assists as well. Dan Skillings, 6'6" junior shooting guard. He's now one of those players coming off the bench. He's just barely under 10 points a game. He's shooting really poorly this year. He's historically been a decent shooter, but this year he just can't shoot, and so they've moved him to the bench. Dylan Mitchell, some of you may remember, 6'8" junior forward. He spent the last 2 years at Texas, where he played against us twice last year,
right.
Transferred in to Cincy this year. He's averaging 10 a game. This is an odd combination. He leads them in rebounds and steals. He shoots 62% from the field, but 23% from three. And the last guy I'll mention is Seamus Lukosius, 6'8" senior forward. He's their second leading scorer. He's now coming off the bench, just like Skillings. He only at 40% from the field this year, but he's still shooting 36% from three. So we need to make sure he doesn't get hot. This team has really underperformed this year, especially once they got into a conference play. And they're not going to turn it around at Fertitta. Although they do play hard, and they will play hard. They'll play physical. They'll defend pretty well. My guess is we'll likely see Sharp maybe a fair amount on James with Cryer, and I think Wilson will get a fair amount of time to play against James as well. We move the ball well. We take advantage of Robertson, Tugler inside, where we definitely have an advantage. We hit the boards where they're not great, and we defend their perimeter game. And this game's a lock. I have us winning 72-54. Kansas, big Monday, 8 o'clock, ESPN. They're 19-9 overall, 10-7 in conference, good for sixth place. This team was picked to be number one overall nationally, and they're in sixth in the Big 12. I would say Cincinnati is up there, and along with North Carolina, maybe the biggest disappointment of the year so far. However, the media, the bracketologists, the ranking people somehow still have Kansas as a projected 5 seed, while BYU is a projected 7, despite the fact that they have the same record as Kansas. BYU beat Kansas by 34, and Kansas has been less than abysmal if games are played away from Lawrence. They're currently 21 in Ken Palm, but they're dropping, and as their offense continually disappears, that's pretty much what's responsible for it. Most of you will remember the miracle 92-86 double overtime win we had at Kansas. The problem is, as I mentioned and Tom mentioned as well, is that like last year, this game will not be played at Fog Allen. They'll be on the road, so do not expect another classic. Dickinson's still a presence inside, and KJ Adams and Badunga have been solid. Badunga was great against us when Adams was out. All three players' numbers absolutely better at home than on the road. And the same can be said for a talented group of guards, Zeke Mayo, DeJuan Harris, Ryland Griffin. It's just almost a night and day difference between playing at home and playing on the road. And then the last player I'll mention, of course, AJ Storr and his multi-million-dollar price tag to transfer from Wisconsin is probably actually KU's most consistent player. He's been terrible both at home and on the road. Kansas is a lock for the NCAAs, although listen to this, they finish up at home versus Tech, then they come to Fertitta, and then at home versus Arizona.
Yeah,
not easy at all. All I'll say for this game is if we play hard, if we're aggressive, we hit the boards, we roll. 76-55.
Oh yeah, I've got a pretty close forecast for that game as well. So
nice.
I mean, from an analytics perspective, first the Cincy game, they're just not the team we thought they were going to be. We all picked them 6th in the league and ranked coming into the year, but boy, have they fallen off a cliff after a hot start. But they're still 53rd in Ken Palm, as you had mentioned, Bill. So Cincy's number 88 in adjusted offensive efficiency and number 24th in adjusted defensive efficiency in Ken Palm, while we're holding steady at number 7 in adjusted offensive efficiency and number 3 in adjusted defensive efficiency this season. So this will be another defensive battle in the Big 12 with some physical play expected. Cincy offensively is just a terrible shooting team this season, just like last season. They're 131st in effective field goal percentage and particularly weak from three-point range, where they're 205th in three-point percentage. Only thing Cincy does well on offense is not turning the ball over, where they're ranked 40th in turnover percentage. On D, just like last season, Cincy doesn't do anything exceptionally well, but they're just good all around and very, very physical. But with this year's Cougars team being so well-rounded, it's going to be just a really tough matchup for Cincy. As the number 3 team in three-point shooting percentage in the country, expect us to test their mediocre three-point percentage D, where they're ranked 98th. And with Cincinnati being terrible at three-point shooting themselves, you can bet we're going to pack it in and dare them to beat us from the arc. Based on the metrics, this is expected to be a 60-point win at home for the Cougs based on Ken Palm. Though Cincy just beat TCU and Baylor at home, I view this as just a bad matchup for them. So I'm predicting a bigger 75 to 55 20-point win for the Cougs. Then for the KU game, a rematch where KU will be looking for payback, based on our Houdini act in Lawrence to pull out the win. KU's been playing better this week, but they've still got a tough Saturday matchup hosting Tech, as you guys had highlighted. Even in a down year, they're still coming in at number 21st in Ken Palm. Now, KU's 58th in adjusted offensive efficiency and number 5 in adjusted defensive efficiency. So it will be another defensive battle in the Big 12. On offense, KU has really lost its way this season, being really inconsistent. They don't shoot the three very well, ranking 147th in Ken Palm. And for a team so dependent on the two-point shot, they're really just good from there as well, ranking 75th in effective field goal percentage from two-point range. So expect us to monster inside and pack it in to dare them to shoot from three. Griffin has a monster day versus us from the arc when we were in Lawrence, so assume we'll always be aware of where he's at. On D, KU is still great all around, especially at defending every shot. They're number 8th in effective field goal percentage D, and they're 13th in both two-point percentage D and three-point percentage D. So thankfully, they don't pressure the ball much, where they're 210th in steal percentage. So in this rematch, expect us to spread them at the arc for threes, bounce with some post-up of Roberts in the paint to keep them honest. I also expect this to be an opportunity for both Arsenault and Francis to get on track heading into March. Based on the metrics, this is projected to be an 11-point win at home for the Cougs by Ken Palm. Hard not to get up for KU when they're in town, so I think we make a statement Big Monday win with a bigger 75 to 55 20-point Cougars win and cut down the nets. Now, since we've wrapped up the Big 12 League Championship so early, how about we all look into March and weigh in on who we believe we match up well against in the tourney and who we prefer to avoid early on in the tournament. Obviously, we'll do a deeper dive once the actual brackets come out. But for now, let's have some fun and just focus on top 2 seeds and maybe a couple of 3 and 4 seeds we prefer not to pair with, as well as the reasons why. So, Bill, why don't you go first? And what's your take on the projected top 2 seeds in the tourney and who you would actually want to pair with and who would you want to avoid?
Well, I'm unless I think I mentioned it last week, unless the committee is on fentanyl or something, we're going to end up a 1 seed. We're going to I see us closing out the season. We may lose in the Big 12 tournament, maybe not, but I don't see us losing up to that point. And the SEC teams are a lot of the top ones are playing each other down the stretch, and there's a time for everyone to lose, and unfortunately for them, it's about to hit, and so I think we end up with a 1 seed.
Yeah, I agree.
To beat us, here's what I have written down: the teams have to be tough, they have to protect the ball, they have to rebound well, and there are lots of teams that do that. But especially to beat us, I think you have to do 2 things really well. One, I think you have to have quick, tenacious guards to cause our backcourt problem. Both getting into our offense and being able to get off uncontested shots. Number two, you've got to have scorers and specifically shooters. I'd say at least 4 scorers on the court and 3 shooters on the floor to neutralize and possibly beat our double teams. So with all that said, I was looking at basically the top 20, and I have 6 teams that I see because they can score and because they defend the perimeter well, 6 teams that could beat us. And ironically, it's 3 from the SEC and 3 from the Big 12. Auburn, Florida, Alabama, Texas Tech, Iowa State, and the outside team is Arizona. The possible teams to beat us, Tennessee, Michigan State, and St. John's. And I'll just tell you, Auburn's got scorers and they play defense. They're one of 4 teams that are ranked in the top 10 offensively and defensively in Ken Palm. They're 1 offensively, they're 10 defensively, so they can do both. Florida, number 2, they're 4 offensively and 7 defensively. They defend they defend, and they've got multiple scores. Not great scores, but they've got multiple scores. Alabama's a bit of the outlier. They're number 5 offensively. They're only 43 defensively.
Right.
We'll be able to score with them. They're just such a good offensive team. It's going to be a matter of who can neutralize the other team's offense the best, and I think that's us. From our conference, we've seen Tech recently. Tom, you had mentioned we could end up playing Tech 4 times if we play them in the Big 12 tournament. But when they've got all their players, they are deep, they can score, they can shoot, and they defend the perimeter. ISU defends the perimeter, but they're not playing all that well right now, but they'll get it going. And Arizona has played actually very good defense this year. They could beat us, but I think that's a bit of a reach. Yet Tennessee is the possibility. They're 1 defensively in Ken Palm, but they're 27 offensively. They slow down the ball. They kind of play a little bit similarly to us, but I think we're the better defensive team. I think we control tempo better than they do, and I think we beat them.
Yep.
Michigan State is kind of a wild card. I think they're going to be the best team coming out of the Big 12. I'm sorry, the Big 10. And they're a possibility because they play pretty well at both ends, 21 offensively, 12 defensively. And then the last one, and this is number 9, is St. John's. They're 2 overall defensively. They've got some talent, but they're 73 offensively. They typically don't shoot very well. If they were to get hot, they can cause a problem. And then real quickly, the 4 teams that have no chance against us, Missouri, who's rising up the rankings. They could finish top 3 in the SEC.
Yeah.
They don't play defense. They won't beat us. Gonzaga, their defense is mediocre as well. They're not tough enough. They won't beat us. Wisconsin, number 7, and I know, Steve, you and I may be talking about this offline, and it may involve dinner, and I hate the fact that I'll be betting against my former school, but I just don't think Wisconsin's strong enough defensively. And, they actually got rid of the aforementioned A.J. Storr.
I know.
They brought in who's been a great 2-guard for them, Tanjay. But I don't see it happening. And the number 1 team I think has no chance against us would be the team that has the best ratings, number 2 in offense, number 4 in defense in Ken Palm, and that would be Duke. Duke has played absolutely nobody in the ACC. Duke may have just as well been in a Division II conference. I think Clemson's overrated, even though they beat Duke.
Yeah.
I think that whole conference is not only weak this year, but I don't think anyone in that conference is tough. I don't think anyone in that conference defends well. Duke can score, and they're once again, they're number 4 defensively, but that's against the ACC. I mean, big
Yeah.
deal. We'd be one with a massive bullet if we were playing the ACC schedule. You know, you've got to, yeah, the statistics are the statistics, but you've also got to take a look at who you're playing. And I think once you hit the conference schedule, Duke's played nobody. They did just have a huge blowout over Illinois on a neutral floor, but I'm not sold on Duke. I think they've got a lot of talent, a lot of offensive talent.
They do.
But I do not think that they come up against us. They're going to be caught so entirely off guard by the defense that I just don't see them having a chance. So
yeah, I mean, I think that point is legit, but I think I've come around on Duke in terms of their ability, and I always have to, and I'll get into it when it's my turn, but you know, you could say the same thing about us just a few years ago when we were in the American, right? That's what everyone was saying about us. It's like, yeah, we're throwing up these gaudy stats against a bunch of nobodies, but we still pounded teams, right, come tourney time. So we'll see.
We still played teams in the American. Your favorite team, Steve, Memphis, Cincinnati, Wichita State made runs in the tournament. I don't think the ACC is at any time during the American while U of H was in it as mediocre as the ACC is this year.
Yeah, possibly. How about you, Tom? What were some of the teams that you were zeroed in on?
Here's my take. In my opinion, and I'm not going by any data, I'm just going by my eyeballs, what I've seen. I think the top 3 teams right now in the country are U of H, Auburn, and the aforementioned Duke.
I agree with you.
Okay.
Jeez, I used to respect you guys.
I'll give you the reasons why.
Hey, close to 40 years ago, I used to like Duke, but that was back when they had, grinders on the team. I mean, they were good, solid players, but they didn't get the 5 stars. But anyway,
Bobby Hurley fan.
I digress. Mm-hmm. You guys were talking about the ACC. Once again, growing up, I started watching college basketball probably mid-'70s, and the ACC was the shit. I mean, I think there was only 8 teams in there, and every single team was really, really, really good. Every game was like must-see TV. But I don't know. It's
what happened,
it's
right?
Not much there. Speaking of UNC,
NIL.
UNC. Yeah. I don't know what they're going to do because Hubert Davis just signed a contract through the next 6 years or so for them. So anyway, getting back to the topic here, I think the top 3 teams right now are us, Auburn, Duke. However, if we see them, it would probably be semifinal and the final. We've already played Auburn. We were up on them 41-32. That was the game. I think TA was still on. Terrence Arsenault was still on a kind of like a restricted minutes thing. I don't think he even played in the second half. It had to do something when the game was played in the Toyota Center, and they didn't have. I don't know if it was an exercise bike or something to keep his Achilles warm, and that's why he was pretty much shut down on the second half. And JVA had come off 19 straight days of no practice.
Yep.
And we still had a 9-point lead. Give credit to Auburn. They made the plays down the stretch. I think it was our second game, Auburn's second game. That little guard they had, Pettiford. First game, I think he had 0 points. Whoever they played, he had 0 points. And he went off against us for 19 or 22 or something like that. I think if we make it all the way and win it, some of maybe our toughest game would be if we had to play ISU or Tech, like in the Elite Eight. Not sure how the seeding will be.
I agree.
Elite Eight, just because of the familiarity that both teams have for each other. It's hard to play a team 3 or 4 times. Now, if there's a bit disparity in how good teams are, there's no problem playing a team 3 or 4 times if you're just so superior to them. But ISU and Tech are no slouches. It depends on where the game's played.
Yep.
Depends on a lot of stuff. Health is going to be a big issue. Knock on wood. Hopefully we go into the NCAAs and everybody's 100% healthy, which we haven't been able to say since I don't know when. Maybe back when Galen and Corey Davis played. But That's the way I see it. There's some other teams there. Florida, I just saw them last night. They were down 39-13
I know.
to a 4-10 Georgia team. Tennessee has had their moments, not so great moments. A&M, I think I'm looking here as I speak. They're about to lose to Vanderbilt at home.
Beautiful.
And Vandy's a good team.
Yeah.
But on your home court, you're probably expected to beat Vanderbilt if you're looking to get like a second seed is what they're talking about.
It's ridiculous.
That's that SEC bias maybe coming into play.
If you notice, A&M did not make my list.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Keep them out of your mouth, right, Bill?
Yeah.
Well, I just don't think they're that good.
Yeah. Neither do I.
Yeah. Like I said, maybe some of that SEC bias coming into play. A lot of high scoring games in the SEC, high 80s, 90s, some games into the 100 point. So I'm kind of wondering how good the defense that's played in that league. Bama is really offensive centric.
Yep.
I heard Kelvin once say, if you walk into a practice within 30 minutes, you can tell what a coach emphasizes, whether it's offense, defense, blah, 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 rebounding, whatever. My guess, if you walked into a Nate Oates practice, they're working a lot of time on offense.
Sense,
you got a lot of firepower though. But then again, if you take away transit baskets and you take care of the ball, then it becomes a half court game, and it's a whole different ball game. For 6 games in a row is kind of tough.
They are.
I think we played the perfect blend
over the past 3 years.
I know. It's killer,
what's it
right?
again? What?
Alabama's 3-0 against us over the past 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with 12 losses last year, they made a run all the way to the Final Four.
Yeah.
Lost to UConn.
No, I give them credit. But
I say we played Bama a second time.
Yeah, I love
it. We beat them probably maybe like in the Elite Eight would be probably a matchup there. But I'm taking our chances on any team we play. I still say we're going to win it.
Agreed.
It's because we're the Houston Cougars and we play defense, we rebound. A lot of people are saying this is Kelvin's best offensive team since he's been at U of H. We've proven we can win different ways. We're a true team. By definition, it's because we don't have to rely on the same guys game after game after game for scoring, etc. The other day it was LJ. The other day it was Milo's.
Yep.
Jawan had a stretch of about 3 games there where he was the guy that was scoring a bunch of buckets. Emmanuel, last year, what did he have 30 against A&M in that A&M game, or was it the Duke game? I can't remember. Duke game we didn't score that much, so it had to be the A&M game. But it could be Emmanuel. So we're a true team in the sense of the word, in that you don't have to shut down one guy. You shut down one guy or try to shut one guy down, it opens up opportunities for other guys because you're playing 4-on-4 then.
Yep. Yeah. No, interesting list, guys. So when I view things from an advanced analytics perspective, and I went to Bracket Matrix as well, and I'd say, quote unquote, the likely top 8 for the top 2 seed lines will be, everyone's got Auburn, Duke. I think Bama, given their non-conference wins, will still get a number 1 seed. And then I think it's either us or Florida as the number 1 seed. And I'm going to say it's going to be us. And then on the 2 line, we probably got Florida, Tennessee, Michigan State. And for now, people still have A&M. So I've just got them tentatively there, even though I agree with you guys. They're not good enough to be at that seed line. And then at number 3, I've got ISU, Tech, Wisconsin, and then possibly even St. John's, because I believe they're going to win out. And then for the 4 seed line, I've got Arizona, Michigan, Kentucky, and then kind of a surprise team, either Clemson or Maryland, because I think certainly Clemson will win most of their games. And Maryland, I'm actually pretty impressed with, though I think they lost today. If we're a number 1 seed, only team I would really slightly prefer to avoid as a number 2 seed is probably Florida, since they're the most balanced of the teams in that group, because they're 4th in adjusted offensive efficiency and number 7th in adjusted defensive efficiency. But the others, like Tennessee, Michigan State, A&M, they're all defensive focused with gaps on the offensive side of things. And with time to prepare, I think we shut down all of their preferred actions on offense. Though honestly, even now, I still think Florida is overrated as well, especially after watching the game yesterday versus Georgia. They're built like us in terms of size. They play rugged D, but their bigs are primarily less athletic bruiser types, which I think we do well against given our athleticism and length at those positions. But if this plays out the way we're expecting it, where we're number one, I think Florida gets placed in the East with Duke anyway. So I don't think we're going to be matched up with them. Now, God forbid, if we end up being in a 2 seed, the primary team I like to avoid until the Final Four is Auburn. I mean, to me, they're the most balanced team I've seen in the last 5 years, along with last year's UConn team and then the Baylor team in 21. Now, with where our team is at today, I think we can beat them, but I'd rather not find out until the Final Four, preferably. Of the other teams, I wouldn't mind being paired with either the other likely SEC teams, Florida or Bama, because I think we match up well with them, even though we've lost to Bama the last 3 times. And though I do believe Duke is overrated, given how light the ACC is, what causes me some hesitation, though, is their overall length. If you look at their lineup, all their wings and guards are 6'6" or above. And length at those positions have given us problems historically, both from a scoring perspective as well as from a guarding perspective. Though I don't, I agree with you, Bill, where I don't think Duke's group of freshmen have experienced our level of intensity yet. So even here, I like our chances, but if given the choice, if we're number 2, I prefer not to be matched up in their region. Now, of the remaining teams in the top 16, I'm going to eliminate all the other Big 12 schools since I'm hopeful, I guess, the committee spreads out the teams as best they can, like they've historically done. Probably the 2 teams I'd like to just see in another bracket, maybe earlier on in the tourney bracket, are Maryland and St. John's. Maybe even Clemson too, but I'd say Maryland and St. John's. St. John's because of how hot they've been, and Rick Pitino. I mean, he's a great coach. And even though their offense isn't very efficient, they're a pressing team, and we don't like to be pressed either. But Maryland and Clemson are solid, balanced teams that have been, I believe, somewhat overlooked. Maryland because they're young, and Clemson because they're in the ACC. But if you look at how they've played, they've got, especially with Clemson, they've got older kids. They made a run last year as well. So, I mean, in the end, I think our team is so good this year
Clemson's been overlooked because they're just not that good.
I mean, KenPom, they're actually not that highly rated either, right? Given where they're at, but I put a value on age too. I think they've got an older team, so we'll see. If I can avoid them like earlier on in the tourney, I just as soon see them later on. But I guess we'll see after these next couple of weeks. But it's always fun to kind of speculate and project out the potential matchups, especially since we've already wrapped up the Big 12 at this point.
The one team that did not appear anywhere on my list of 20, and I mentioned 13.
Yeah.
The one team that did not appear anywhere was Tom's favorite team.
Kansas.
You got it.
State? Oh,
yeah. Hey,
Utah State.
I mean, another team that none of us have mentioned are kind of the other Big East teams, right? No one mentioned UConn. No one mentioned Marquette. No one mentioned Creighton either, right? So they've kind of
good reason.
Conference.
Good reason they weren't mentioned.
Yeah,
they've kind of fallen off too, right? This season. So
I was never a believer in Creighton. No.
Oh, no.
But getting back to Kansas, they continue to play the way they do. They have what do you think they're ranked? A 5 seed maybe?
They're a 5,
they got
but
a 12 seed over 5 seed written all over them.
With the 3 games they have left.
Exactly.
With the 3 games they have left, Tom, they could easily be a 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
I imagine they're going to be a 6.
So 6 for 11 over a 6, whoever
can easily happen.
Yeah. So let me ask you guys this on a completely different topic related to the tourney and kind of the Big 12 in general. Do you guys believe Baylor will make it still? I mean, they've been in a tough stretch as of late.
I just think the bubble looks so weak this year. The teams that are on the bubble, man, I mean, it's
I
probably
agree.
some of the weakest bubble teams I've seen maybe in ever, just bad bubble teams.
I haven't looked at and there are only 3 games left
Yep.
in the Big 12 in the regular season. I don't know who Baylor's playing, but right now, the last I saw, they were a projected 10 seed. So that's, when you consider all the teams that are, and I'm saying this in air quotes, are mediocre, the smaller teams that win their conferences, that's right down near the very end of the at-larges. So, yeah, Baylor could be in trouble.
Yeah, because they've got Oklahoma State at home, TCU away, and then they play us. So, I don't know.
Okay, so they could go 2-1. They need to go 2-1.
Yeah, I was going to say they need to because they've lost 3 in a row at this point.
Yeah, they need to go 2-1. By the way, one thing I wanted to bring up, I was stunned. A couple of us were looking at this. Joe Lenardi from the ESPN bracketologist put out the entire bracket and who was going to win everything, and he had, I think, Alabama and Auburn in the championship. He had us. It's funny. Today he had us a 1. Yesterday he had us a 2, and in that bracket he had us a 2 and us losing to Alabama, but he also had a number 1 seed losing to a 16.
Really?
And that was
what, Duke?
The mighty, formerly Rick Smits led Marist over Duke.
Really?
In round 1, yeah. And then, funny enough, despite the fact that I just was not too complimentary of them, he had Alabama, Auburn, Michigan coming out of that region as a 4 seed, and a 5 seed, Clemson, making the Final Four.
Wow. As much shit as Lenardi gets, I'm surprised that Jerry Palm doesn't get more shit. I typically have more issue with his bracket predictions. I mean, Lenardi at least had changed ours to a 1 seed right after we beat Tech. Jerry Palm, he was on the radio today. He still had us as a 2 seed. It's like, what are you looking at, right? So,
behind Florida?
Yeah, and Florida had lost, right? We had already had some big wins. So it's like, what are you looking at, right? He was on the radio today saying
and
that.
Not only did Florida lose, but to be down 26 points in the first half to a 4-10 Georgia team, that's not a good look.
Yeah.
Every team that we've lost to is going to be in the tournament. No question.
San Diego State's still good enough.
They're in.
Yeah, they're in. I hope so. So
they're in.
Okay, so that's it for our 45th episode of the No Conference for Old Men podcast. We hope you all enjoyed it. And again, we'd really appreciate it if folks would follow, subscribe, or collect our podcast, depending on your podcast platform of choice. We're also available via the Republic of Football podcast feed from the folks at Dave Campbell's Texas Football as the only basketball-centric podcast, or at the GoCoogs.com website for those that prefer to digest the content that way. We appreciate the continued support from all. Also, please give us a follow on our Twitter account, No Conference for Old Men. Thank you all again for listening, and please be on the lookout for next week's episode as it drops. Take care, everyone.